Hello, Martin. Hello, everyone.
Krishna, I'll turn it over to you for chairing the discussion.
Yes. Before that, should we share the antitrust?
Oh, yes. Silly me. Hang on. Go. Yeah, slight oversight on my part there.
I was searching for antitrust on my desktop.
It's here. Okay, so as usual, and as prompted by Krishna, here's the Linux Foundation Antitrust Policy Notice. We show this before each meeting. You can see the full policy on our website, and if you're from a Linux Foundation member company, you can contact our counsel, Andy Updegrove, for more information. And with that, I turn it over to Balakrishna.
Hello, everyone. We have made significant progress on our web-based training, or on our first web-based training, which we are planning to release by December 16th, as shared in an email over by Shane. And we are towards the last chapter, the chapter 5, where we have a lot of inputs from many of our colleagues. And Martin also pointed out that it would be better if we could add chapter 5 on the advanced topic. So we can discuss further on that topic in this meeting. Along with that, once we conclude the status of chapter 5, whether it remains in the first part of the training or in the advanced training, after that we can touch upon all the comments that are there from the chapter 1 till chapter 4, and then we can fix further things so that our technical team can look into the complete content, and then they give us their opinion or comments on what needs to be added or fixed before they could do the final web-based training builder. Does that sound fine? I assume that's
great.
Okay. So let me share my screen here. I'll just open the content which I've opened, course content. I hope my screen is visible now.
Super clear.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, we have started working on chapter 5, which is about running open source review. And the idea of having this chapter here is here in the basic training is that anyone who takes up open source basic awareness training, this first part of the training would be more like basic awareness training on open source and what are the different topics that might come up or may touch upon during the open source consumption or use part, right? That's the basic awareness we want to provide to our audience. And during that, this chapter 5, according to our idea, it would serve as the purpose it would serve would be like every use or contribution to open source would be accountable. And the accountability of how the open source usage or contribution is tracked is by open source review. It can be either by the community or by your own structure within the company, or an individual contributor or a user who's using open source can review it among themselves, and then they can keep a track of what components are being used and how it's being used. That was the idea of why chapter 5 would go well in the basic training. But there can be many different opinions here, and can we discuss that here, and can we see if we need this chapter 5 here or be pushed into advanced training? Hello?
Everybody's waiting for someone else to speak.
Yeah.
I guess so. Obviously, you went on the call last time, and I wasn't on the ones before that. So, I guess if I summarize correctly, Shane, the Linux Foundation viewpoint was basically the content would be too short without chapter 5, which I understand. I guess my opinion is the chapter 5, as it's currently scoped, is much more about process and policy, and we haven't really even got to that. So I was thinking that we should have a new chapter 5, which perhaps introduces a bit more of the context, or indeed starts to introduce some of the things which would be in the advanced course and explain why some of these things are a little bit tricky, just to tee up that stuff rather than going straight into things which are very process orientated, will scare people of suddenly talking about legal teams, program managers and stuff, where, as I understand it, we want this basic training to be just about open source licensing and the issues around it, and nothing more. So it's applicable to anybody to read, whether it's somebody who's just planning to create their own open source project and thinking of starting up a GitHub, to being an organization that's doing stuff. So I just find it a bit weird to suddenly straight into this. Not that the content is bad, just that I don't think it's the right place.
It's a really good point. And Balakrishna, just for reference, on the last call, I focused just on pointing out that essentially LF training said to us they want 5 chapters because they didn't see enough material in the first 4.
Yes,
sorry.
Sorry, please go on.
I was just going to say there is that intriguing concept of if we chop a bit out of chapter 5, could we use that and get away with it, and then put the rest of chapter 5 into course number 2, second part. What Martin raised is an interesting prospect.
Yes, actually, what Martin said just now makes a lot of sense, Shane. And as you also suggested, yes, we can chop up the topic, or probably we can make a new chapter 5, hinting to this current chapter 5, which will be further chapter 6. So we'll make a small chapter 5, which would give a brief introduction on end-to-end compliance, and the end-to-end compliance would have open source review as an integral part to implement the end-to-end compliance. Probably we can do that, but I think the new chapter 5 will have about maximum of one subtopic within it. Should that be fine?
I guess we can discuss that now. Yeah, I think it makes sense to. I don't know. I guess I was kind of thinking perhaps it's this final chapter in this section should be, as you say, kind of like wrapping up what's gone in the chapters 1 to 4. Kind of say this stuff isn't necessarily easy, but it has to be done. And hey, we've got some processes and policies to help you, and they're in the going to be an advanced course. Not sure if that makes some sense.
Yes, it did. But of course, so I don't think we can add summarization onto a separate chapter, right? I think we have enough summarization in each topic itself.
Yes, I didn't mean that. I meant more along the lines of what's I meaning? Yeah, so all of this background information leads to you have to do compliance. There are a lot of issues with being able to do that compliance. And I guess that's what I was thinking would be perhaps highlighted in chapter 5. But I probably need to think about it a bit more. I really only focused on my comments as far as end of chapter 4.
No problem. So how do we go about this? Code summarization, chapter, next chapter. What we have: key concepts, introduction to source compliance.
Could we add a section to say why we need a open source review, and very brief about how we are going to achieve it, and then the details of it would be in the chapter 5.
Does that sound fine? I know there are typos in between. That's a nice touch over there. Are we missing anything else over here? Should we do a topic which we have missed here? Very recently, Yari had posted a question on LinkedIn saying that whether open source compliance should be at the end of the um, product completion or during the product build phase, and should it be mandatory or optional? Can we bring that part here in the as one part of the discussion, which could probably say like why would we need this open source awareness training at all, and whether it is essential during the software build and release process, or should we just add it as a question so that people can take that home as a afterthought?
Yeah. Because I think that question will probably be answered post the chapter 5 reading.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
so we can
say
just
points
leave
to
that question.
ponder or something.
Yeah, so we can just leave an afterthought question probably.
Yeah. Nice touch. Yeah.
Do you think this is enough for our course summarization chapter, or are we missing anything? Okay. I think this should be sufficient for our new chapter 5, and it would be fairly a small chapter since we won't be adding, huge details anywhere, and it would be small discussions. There's already editing being done here. Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, folks. I hope to have a look at this a bit earlier, but I haven't been very well this week, so I'm just looking at it now. But anyway, it's all in sort of suggestion mode, so feel free to delete any of it if it doesn't make sense.
No problem. Meanwhile, I think we can start with this new chapter. If others are taking care of the existing comments, probably we can start building foundation of this new chapter. Hello, am I still in the call? Something says reconnecting.
You certainly are. Sorry, I'm just going through the document, doing some suggestions at the moment.
No problem. I just saw reconnecting on my screen and I thought I dropped out of the call.
Yep, for sure.
I think on this chat, I don't think I'd use the term summarizes. I think it's more that it brings together all of like the different points and things which have been mentioned before, and perhaps brings them into a more practical sense. So just thinking about it, I've been thinking about it a bit more here. In the previous chapter, we're talking about like the linking considerations and things like that. So it would seem reasonable to perhaps bring into this new chapter 5, like the like considerations of how to choose an open source component, which could be license, community support, and all those kinds of things. That would seem applicable to mention those things in the basic course, I think.
I think we also we were not discussing on the license selection part, right? Somewhere during the chapter 2 we discussed that we do not discuss more in detail or give a lot of hints where developers make their own choices of license. So should we bring that point here in the chapter 5?
So I was meaning more of the okay. So the chapter 4 content is talking about like key concepts related to the software, like incorporation and linking and all that sort of stuff. And I guess that the point of mentioning all of these things is because these are considerations when you're complying to the licenses, although it doesn't actually explicitly say that anywhere, right?
Yes.
So I'm kind of thinking, well, so to some sense, following on from this material, you kind of need to point out why that's even important, right? So the key point here is if you know if your component is in a GPL, you're probably not going to be wanting to link to it.
True.
Or
I mean, it depends on the use.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of meant getting myself confused now. Shouldn't think on my feet. No, so say if a component is LGPL license, probably depending on your use, you're going to want to dynamically link to it, not statically link to it, and that's the point. Following on from that section, right, is that there are compliance issues to take into account.
True, Martin. So you mean to say we need to provide an example of how exactly it would come into sense, right? But otherwise, we have it generically laid out here in how do you want to use open source component, and here it speaks about how these concepts of linking comes into picture in a very generic sense, of course, not in detail. But I understand by your suggestion that we need to provide a basic example of how this would make sense for us when we are using a GPL license or a LGPL license, right?
Well, I think it needs to be in there somewhere, right? So chapter 4 talks about all of these different concepts of linking and modification and translation, but doesn't put it into any context at all about open source licensing. Zero. So it's nice background information, but it doesn't actually help anyone, right? So at some point, this information that's come in the previous chapters has to be pulled together and say, well, this is why it's important, and this is what you have to do with it. And then the second course is, well, hey, there's a whole process and a whole bunch of tools and techniques and everything to help you with all that. But yeah, I'm still struggling with it in my own head as to what to do.
I think I got a small hint from what you were saying. And rather than bringing it into next chapter, can we just add it here? Something's really wrong with my browser.
It could be, because of course that does fall into like the review thing, right? Because if as an engineering team, you maybe have several open source components you could choose from to achieve functionality X. Those things could be under different licenses. Those could be different support from community, all sorts of different things. And giving some kind of clue as to how you might look at those, I think is fairly reasonable as well. I mean, Andrew used to have some kind of information in as part of the template policy stuff, didn't you, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm actually sort of expanding that as well. So I hope to release a new version of that fairly shortly. But yeah, that's quite a useful checklist of things to think through when you're selecting code.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to kind of think from like almost backwards of like at the end of this very basic basic course, what are the sort of things I will have want people have taken away? Well,
exactly.
I will have want them to have taken away that just copying stuff off the internet isn't acceptable. I'd want them to take away whatever the license says at the top level on GitHub is not necessarily to be believed.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the linking stuff like that. No copying bits of code snippet and sticking it in the middle of your code. You know, all these kinds of things that
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
we should have covered the basics of what the impact of that is.
Martin, can we go about it in this direction rather than saying that let us not give a hint on don't use a particular component in XYZ format. Rather, we can go in a direction where if you since we are already talking about statically linking and dynamically linking in one or two words over there, we can say if you bring a component, if you if you statically link a component with another component which has GPL license on its GitHub, then naturally your component, your proprietary component would also become GPL. And if you were not to link it statically with the open source component, and if it would just be a separate module on its own, and the result of the separate module is inherited onto the GPL component, then your proprietary component would remain fine. Can we keep it more generic like this, and rather make it look like we are giving hints on do not club proprietary and GPL?
Yeah, I don't think we want to be giving hints, as you say. I
Yes.
think we want to be, and again, obviously, we can't cover every license and every situation. I think
True.
that the hints are just hinting about what should be considered, not necessary specific answers.
Yes.
But those things could, so you're hinting at what are the possible issues and the possible solutions, and they can be illustrated with specific examples, but we couldn't be all encompassing at all.
Are you also facing an issue with the Google Docs, or is it only me? I'm not able to access it.
I was looking out the window trying to think.
Yeah, it seems to be working okay for me.
Okay, it's completely non-responsive to me.
No, it's fine with me.
Seems okay. I'm not sure where Andrew is at the moment.
I'm just looking at the sort of the linking chapter 4 linking section.
Yeah, which is great content. It's just that it's not actually put into any context of why it would be important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if it sort of leaps into far too much detail at this particular stage. It's, I don't know, my old physics teacher always used to define education as a process of diminishing deception, and this, I think this sort of leaps into sort of detail far too much. It's always, what it's asking for really is another module that then sort of explains what the various different forms of code combination are and the effect of licensing, because it's actually quite difficult from a licensing perspective, explaining why dynamic linking is different from static linking. And if you go onto the Free Software Foundation's website and look at their FAQs, they say, well, there's no difference at all. But we know that that's not true. So that's also some sort of information that needs to come out. I mean, people are being given by conflicting information from two seemingly authoritative sources, and at some point that's going to need to be resolved as well.
Yes, true. Hence, why do we? I think we should avoid bringing it into a new chapter. And of course, what Martin said makes a lot of sense. That we have discussed on the topics, but there's no absolute link which we have provided to the entire course at all. It stands alone from the total topic. But Andrew, what you're saying is also right, that we cannot bring to so much detail at this point right now. So we just give example right there under those respective topics. Okay, even saying examples actually sounds wrong to me, but rather we would say that this linking is spoken about in some of the FSF licenses, or the modification part is spoken more in detail in Eclipse license. Something like that. We can just give a small hint about it, and then that can be taken up in one of the more advanced courses. Of course, not in the next course as well.
Well, I think that, yes, like the hints is that some licenses enforce different obligations and conditions depending on these things, the way
Yeah,
it's linked,
exactly.
and then explain what those concepts are. That at least puts into context of that's why this content is here, is because it's actually important to you. It's actually important to you from a fairly fundamental understanding as well.
Then how about we put these exact same words here in this chapter? We will say that these particular content are used while understanding the license obligations, and each license bears its own understanding of these particular words. But of course, the core definition does not change. We put these words in here in the knowledge check part, right? No, we just before knowledge check, we would just say these words and then we would finish it off, right? Then we won't be obligated to give an example of what license what license assumes incorporation in what way, or how linking matters in GPL or LGPL. We need not say that explicitly. Please do let me know if I did not make any sense over there.
Well, I'm going back to have a look at that chapter again now and
Yeah.
comment more, basically.
Because you both are absolutely right. We do have to create a link of why we learned all these different topics here, but we cannot
That's
give too
always,
much details as well.
yeah, that's always a problem. We're the experts, right? So, but we have to
Yeah.
think about people who are not the experts. So
True.
and spoon feed them. Well, I guess, yeah. I guess one of the things we do need to finish off the earlier chapters. I guess, Andrew, you've been going in and making edits against my comments, I guess, probably.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, because I couldn't remember who did each chapter, so I'm sure they're pretty easy to fix.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's you know, the early chapters are really coming together now, which is great. Yeah, I will sort of spend a bit more time going through that and making the amendments that I need to. I'll try. Oh, excuse me. I'll try and give a bit of thought to the best way to introduce some of the concepts in the linking chapter as well.
I'll just try to add this text here. Of course, it will be in the reference mode or suggestion mode, so we can remove it later.
Yeah.
Why is it not coming in suggestion mode?
Folks, I'm going to have to leave fairly shortly. So I think what I'll do, if it's okay, is I'll just spend a little bit of time just reviewing that chapter and maybe making a few suggestions and changes.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
sure.
Brilliant. Okay, sorry about that. Good stuff. Thanks, folks. And yeah, I will catch up with you soon. Okay, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good day.
Bye.
Take care, Andrew. Have a great day.
I'm sorry about my phone. Well, I've added 2 lines just at the end of chapter 4. Um, if it's if it sounds okay, we can keep that, or we can change it or remove it.
I think this is all looking pretty good. And I wonder if, we can throw it to the Korean and Japanese and Taiwanese communities to see if they can help as well, alongside, of course, our China mainland community. Because
That
we have
sounds
a
like
lot
a great idea.
yeah, we've got a lot of good stuff in there now. I guess we just need more eyes, right?
Yes.
And fantastic work, everyone. It's such a drag to get this done. I know that it's a real pain in the neck, but once we get this done, it's going to have a very large impact.
But meanwhile, parallelly, we also have to start on the playbook activities.
Yes, yes. Good news. I've been doing quite a lot on the playbook medium company stuff. And I think I'm about halfway there on that. So, maybe on our next call, we can have a look at that as well.
I just opened this document. It already has a lot of information, Shane. Thank you.
Yeah, just getting started. Yeah, I focused on the medium company stuff. There's just a little bit of notes on the small and large company. Just trying to make sure that I've got pieces in sync between them. I've got things like the person is done. I'm working now on getting to the execution of the plan stage. People have got their problem. They've got their current situation. They've got the people involved. And now it's about execution. So that's the next part to work on. Just putting the direct link to execution here.
Cool. So I will start looking into the playbook as well today, end of day, and then try to add some comments or suggestions so that if I find some.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I guess perhaps we wrap it up there for today. What do you think?
Yes, I think we can take up rest of the things offline.
Okay.
And,
Wonderful.
hopefully by next meeting, we should have something concrete and we've wrapped this first course at least.
Hopefully. And thank you so much for your incredible work here. And Martin, you too. What has been done is a huge step forward from where we were before.
Yeah, I was just gonna say for on those earlier chapters, if any of my comments don't make any sense or whatever, it's probably easiest just for somebody, just have a one-on-one Zoom meeting just to go through them and just get them done. I don't think it needs to be a big group activity. It'll probably be slower.
Sure, Martin, we can do that. So I'll go through all those comments again now. And then if you find something where I would need your help, I'll set up a meeting with you. Is that fine?
Yeah. I just think that's the most efficient way to deal with it.
Sure.
Because most of them are pretty minor, right? So.
Yes, sure. I'll do that on Monday then.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.